How we doing, class? Welcome to Snow Day of Snow Day and Winter Semester Snow Days. So we want to make sure we get a very good dose of Chapter 4 before we move on to our middle 4 chapters of the book. The first 4 chapters of the book are really our setup. And this is the last of the 4 first chapters that leads us into the 4 zones. You know, we talked a little bit about in the previous chapters about the 5th P of marketing, participation. Well, this concept of communities and the fact that there's a participation amongst the fans, this is essential and social. We really can't go on into the zones without doing a strong dose of digital community type dialogue. So an online community is the same thing as a regular community. A regular community usually was bounded by geography. Online communities are not bounded by geography. Regular communities usually had word of mouth or perhaps paper type communication, and it was more one-to-many type communication. And online communities is more many-to-many type communications. So within a community, you know, all this social networking information that you're seeing here and all the research, this was all done for a decade or two prior to even digital social networks existing. It's just we're able to apply this theory to the digital world, and we're actually have more robust tests for it because we see what's happening digitally, and it's trackable, you know. We don't have to ask people for surveys. We can just look at their behavior. So a social network is a digital community, and it's a set of relevant nodes connected by one or more relations. A node is a member of the network. So if you think about our class, there's 27 people in the class plus me. So there's 28 nodes in the network of our class. Our class happens to be a non-digital community, but each one of us are a node. You know, each one of these members have different relationships with each other in class. Some of these people in class might be your roommate. Some of them might be in your fraternity. Some of them might be a fellow athlete or an athlete in your own sport. But these are all members. Every time a member talks to someone, it's called an interaction. Okay? And there's multiple different types of interactions in the social world. It could be a text interaction, it could be a video interaction, it could be a photo interaction. Now, flows are exchanges of interactions, you know, within the network. It could be the case that 1 or 2 or 3 members of this 28 node network are more influential than others. And information flows, usually starts from that individual and flows forward. Can something be shared? And there are horizontal and also vertical networks. You know, like if we talk about networks within Seton Hall and we go and talk about various other classrooms, social groups, dorms, go from there. So we touched on this class a little bit the other day. But basically, the 6 degrees of separation, another way to... To describe that is the small world phenomenon. You know, we always say this in common knowledge where, you know, you kind of meet someone and directly go, wow, isn't it a small world? Well, in the digital world, there are some people, including the founder of LinkedIn, that believe that there isn't 6 degrees anymore. That in the digital world, you can do it in 3 steps or less. So some characteristics of online communities. We know in this Web 2.0 world that we have lots of two-way interaction and participation. That's where we have to start. But then we talk about conversations, presence, democracy, standards of behavior, and levels of participation. So let's walk through each of these. Conversations. Conversations has to have more than one individual part of it. In digital conversations, sometimes it's not just text or talking or video, or it could be a hybrid of one or more of these, but it is an overall conversation. Presence, is that psychological feeling you have when you see a post from a friend of yours that was a high school person that maybe you haven't seen them in a number of months. It's that thought that you have in your head that kind of refers them. You sort of, even though they're at some other college, somewhere else, you haven't seen them for a long time, your memories of them give them a more close presence than actually physically that they are. You could have a really good friend and they could be studying in Japan, but because you stay connected digitally, they feel that they're not halfway around the world. Some other characteristics of online communities: there's usually some sort of democracy or media democratization. In other words, there's rules or norms that are established within the community. Some communities, it's very common to do one thing versus others. This is just a graphical representation of how a message might spread. If you see, we start off with the message from person 1, and then we have different levels of networks. We send the message to 222, our 3 close friends, but if you look at 2 has connections with these 3 and 3, and 2 has this 3 and 3, and this 2 seems to have this 3, but then around them are like another degree of separation is 4. So you could say from message 1 to 4, that's 3 steps. 1 step, 2 step, 3 steps. A little bit of that. Standards of behaviors, norms, cultural rules. There are some norms of behavior. It's not popular that much anymore, but Second Life was an online virtual world that was popular for a number of years. And it was pretty Game of Thrones there in that particular social network. But that was only within that virtual network. So each, you think about the standards of behavior on your Yahoo Fantasy, but you may have fantasy, you might also do ESPN or CBS. Well, if that's the case, then I'm sure there's some slight variations of behavior and rules and norms across each one of these types of networks. Finally, we have the level of participation, and we've been kind of hinting on this throughout the semester with regards to Twitter and what really qualifies as a active user. The level of participation might impact how we define the level of participation, can impact what we consider an active user or not. But some online networks is nothing but pure participation, and other online networks are more of a one-to-many with some dialogue here and there, or a Q&A question about something. But it's really about the leader of the network and everybody else following that person, but the leader taking questions every now and then. The chapter doesn't, has a little bit of a transition here, and they're trying to get into why things spread. Let me hit pause for 1 second. I'll show you guys something. Okay, here we are, we're back. This book just came out last year. This is Jonah Berger. There's a couple links to this on my blog. I've written up about him. He's a professor at Wharton. He's done some pretty sharp stuff. This is a very, very good book about why things spread. And he even did a number of studies that include online/social environments. Now, that said, the granddaddy of them all in this topic is, of course, The Tipping Point. This was Malcolm Gladwell's best book. This was written well before, although it was written in the internet era, it was written well before social networking and blogging. But the concept of viral, it almost can be traced back to him. I'm sure someone else used it, but he has a whole different way of describing it. This is a spectacular book. And it's been around long enough that if you go into a job interview, chances are the person you're interviewing with already read it. So it's a very good pickup. Both of these books specifically address how something can spread within a community. Is it something about the structure of the community? If it comes from someone who's very influential in the community, then the idea is going to travel faster. Here's this idea of a meme, and you guys have been seeing memes all over the place for the longest time here in social. Sometimes memes travel fast. It's a little bit of a cultural info thing. It's either funny, witty, but that meme helps something travel from node to node in a community faster. I believe today they just announced that there's going to be a sequel to Sharknado. Not that you really want to spend your time watching something like this, but Sharknado in itself can become a meme. And, oh gosh, the jokes. It's bad. So within a group, there's often someone known as an opinion leader. An opinion leader is someone that's usually looked up to, someone that people take their opinion as not truth, but hold a lot of weight with it. They might be an expert on certain things. They might be an opinion leader about one topic, but not another. So if you have a computer question or a tech question, you go to someone in your fraternity. If you have a New York City question, you could go to an opinion leader or someone that that knows an awful lot about the city. Opinion leaders are someone that you trust their information and you pass it along. So what happens is, it's called social capital. And capital is like money, conceptually. But social capital means that these opinion leaders, they do valuable things. They're highly knowledgeable in their area. It could be technically or non-tech. They're highly knowledgeable in their area. They have the knowledge to be able to pre-screen, evaluate, and synthesize information in an unbiased way. I know this example from the text is only talking about product, but it's really within a group. They are very socially active. They're highly interconnected, possibly with other opinion leaders. And for each opinion leader, there's a bunch of followers around that opinion leader. Either they hold positions of leadership or they hold a position of social stature. They tend to be similar to the consumer in terms of, I don't care about that. It's not that they're the first to buy new products. They're usually the first to know or the first to do a significant evaluation of something. I think that's a better way to describe it. So here's a good definition of social capital. The book that I just showed you on Amazon, Contagion, I think half of the reasons he goes around why something spreads involves some kind of definition or variation of social capital. Same thing we could say about reputation capital. If you have a reputation for being known for a particular thing, people are going to come to you. So we have strong and weak ties. This is basic networking theory. We have nodes. There's lots of nodes in our social network. We are looking for Significant ties, those are close to us, versus weak ties, those are probably not as close to us and they're connected through someone else. Now, I told you in class the other day that it's the significance of these weak ties that makes your social network stronger. It's the weak ties that bring in opinion leaders that are weak to you. They're not weak as in their knowledge. An opinion leader that's a weak tie, well, they bring in more knowledge to the community than someone who's a strong tie. So power users, there's 5 characteristics of a power user. They tend to be an activist. They tend to be very well connected. They tend to have very strong impact. They set trends, and they're kind of inquisitive, or they're smart along those lines. So if we think about what makes them, give them the social capital, they have some kind of reward power, the ability to provide others with what they desire. Potentially. It could be the case where, you have a clout score of 25 and someone with a clout score of 75 retweets something of yours. That's a reward. Coercive power, forcing someone through. Perhaps this happens when you have a mean professor, or you have someone who's a mean boss or supervisor. They have the ability to punish others. Sometimes they have legitimate power. Referent power, the authority to walk through the motivation to identify with a person and please. This is sort of like someone who doesn't have official power, but has the ability to either persuade or empathize with someone quickly. Expert, this is like knowledge. Knowledge is king. That's real good. Related is information. So if we think about node to node, which is really person to person relationships, your level of activity in your social network is based upon 1, the mix and number of people you have around you and who you're connected with, what content you create, status updates, photos that you do, comments onto other people's photos, feedback you receive from others, likes, high fives, comments, and how these types of contents and feedbacks are distributed. Okay. Influence. I have, this comes, particularly this one, comes from, hold on one second. If you were to ask me my number 1 book recommendation of all time, if I'm on a desert island and there's one book, it would be this book. It would be Robert Cialdini, Science and Practice. Because in this book, the most cited psychology in all social psychology, the history of social psychology, which is this dude, he sums down all the psychology literature to 6 core principles of how to be persuasive and how to have influence amongst people. And one of them is social proof. And what happens is if you see someone doing something in a YouTube video, in a LinkedIn post, in a Facebook status update, in a Twitter meme, it encourages you or gives you the, for you to mimic or follow in their footsteps. It gives you the, not the right, but it gives you the social norm to do so. If you see someone else doing it, you can also therefore do it, because that is socially acceptable. It's a social proof. Word of mouth, this isn't a term, you could throw it in your Nugget dictionary, but it's been kind of beat up for a long time. But this is word of mouth marketing, but in an online world. I'm not really sure what this is right here. And then finally, towards the end of the chapter, They're talking about modern society is becoming more enclosed. People are doing less face-to-face conversation because they're doing all this stuff staring at a screen. So, does that mean people are becoming more insulated and they're actually communicating less? Or because they have these technologies, they have the ability to communicate more with many-to-many conversations as opposed to one-to-one conversations? There's arguments for or against each of these. I'm in favor of the latter, to be honest with you. I think we're more connected now and having more conversations now and keeping up with more individuals now than we've ever done before. It's just so much easier to do that. I mean, I just think of me and I think of my LinkedIn account. And without LinkedIn, it would be so much harder for me to keep track of, I've taught at 3 universities so far. I've taught in Florida, I've taught in Boston, and now I've taught in New Jersey. I still have connections to my students from Florida, and LinkedIn makes it so much easier to stay in contact with them as opposed to just having email or sending them a Christmas card every so often. So that's chapter 4. It's a good setup for us to go into our 4 zones. You have any particular questions, you let me know. Okay? Thanks. Stay warm.